Ever feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill?
Tell me about it.
Just trying to like summon
Yeah.
motivation
Right.
to tackle your goals?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Absolutely.
But what if I told you that motivation magic
Mm-hmm.
isn't about waiting for like
Yeah.
inspiration to strike,
Right.
but about simple tweaks to your mindset
Yeah.
and daily routine?
I love it.
That's what we're diving into today.
Let's do it.
Practical strategies to unlock that inner drive
Okay.
and make those goals a reality.
Yeah, wait.
We're pulling these strategies straight from the source.
Okay.
A book aptly titled
Oh, wait.
100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. Change your life forever.
There you go. 100 ways.
That's a lot.
This is like a lot to unpack, right?
It is a lot to unpack.
Yeah. But what's fascinating is how many of those strategies
Okay.
hinge on a very simple idea.
Okay.
Action often precedes motivation. It's like flipping a switch in your brain. We think we need to feel motivated to act,
Right.
but sometimes it's the act itself that sparks the fire.
Interesting. This book throws out a wild idea that I got to ask you about.
Okay.
It suggests living as if you've already achieved your goal.
Okay. Right.
So if I'm dreaming of running a marathon,
Mhm.
I should be
Yeah.
strutting around like I just won the Boston Marathon.
You're catching on. Now, you don't need to go full-on victory lap just yet,
Okay.
but the book gives a great example with, of all people, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yep.
Long before his movie star days, someone asked him what he planned to do after bodybuilding, and his response, "I'm gonna be the #1 box office star in all of Hollywood."
Hold up. Arnold had his sights on Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Back then.
Oh, yeah. And this was at a time when action heroes weren't exactly known for their Austrian accents.
Right.
But he truly believed it, he visualized it, he talked about it, and most importantly, he started living as if it was already true. And, well, we all know how that story played out.
Okay. That's mind-blowing.
It is amazing.
But it's not just about having a goal. It's about embodying that future version of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like this. Your brain has this incredible ability to adapt. When you consistently act and think as if something is true, your brain starts creating new pathways, making that truth more attainable. So if your goal is to write a book, imagine yourself as a published author. How would you act? What would you prioritize?
That is seriously powerful stuff, but let's be honest. There are days when even thinking about our goals feels overwhelming. You know, those days when your to-do list
Yeah.
looks longer than a CVS receipt.
I hear you. It's easy to get bogged down in the details.
Right.
But this is where the book throws us another gem, the power of simplification. And I'm not talking about just decluttering your workspace, although that helps.
Yeah.
It's about finding creative ways to combine tasks for maximum efficiency. And dare I say, enjoyment.
All right, now we're talking. Combining fun with function. Tell me more.
They give this example of a parent who combined grocery shopping with helping their child complete a book report. Instead of dreading two separate chores, they turned it into an adventure. The kid got to make lists, choose healthy snacks, and basically be the grocery store CEO.
Okay, wish I had thought of that when my kids were younger.
And while the little CEO explored the aisles, the parent used the downtime at the deli counter to catch up on the book report. 2 birds, 1 grocery trip.
I love that. So it's about finding those win-win situations, right?
Exactly. And these opportunities are everywhere once you start looking. Could you listen to an educational podcast while you're on that morning run? Brainstorm ideas for a work project while you're walking the dog? The possibilities are endless.
I'm already feeling more motivated. And we're just getting started. This book is packed with practical tips. And one that caught my eye was handle everything immediately. Now, my desk might be proof that I don't always follow this rule.
Right.
But I'm intrigued. Is this about becoming hyper-organized?
It's less about being a neat freak and more about being aggressively present. It's about tackling tasks the moment they arise instead of letting them snowball into this monstrous to-do list that haunts your dreams.
Okay, monster to-do list. That's a little too relatable. So how does handling everything immediately actually work?
It's like that old saying, a stitch in time saves 9. The book tells a story about a CEO who swears by this principle. His catchphrase is apparently, okay, done, what's next?
Now that's someone who's mastered their inbox. But I have to imagine that takes a certain personality type.
Yeah.
Not all of us are wired to power through tasks like that.
That's the surprising part. It's not about personality as much as it is about training your brain to stay focused. By handling things immediately, you eliminate that mental clutter, that feeling of being overwhelmed by a million loose ends. And that clarity actually frees up mental energy, allowing you to be more decisive and, as the book puts it, aggressive in your work.
Okay, I can see how that would be a game changer. Instead of feeling scattered,
Yeah.
you're laser focused on the task at hand.
Exactly. And this connects beautifully to another example from the book. They talk about Jim Colby, who ran for Congress in Arizona. His campaign was the definition of limited resources and even tighter deadlines. So they had to be strategic, ruthless even with their time and messaging.
Yeah, sounds like a classic underdog story. So what did they do?
They stripped their campaign down to the core message and repeated it relentlessly. No fancy gimmicks, no distractions, just pure focused action.
And I'm guessing, against all odds.
They won.
Wow.
This underdog campaign toppled a popular incumbent, proving that simplicity combined with unwavering focus can lead to extraordinary results.
Talk about inspiring. So it's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most and doing it now.
You got it.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a fascinating aspect of motivation that we often overlook, the role of our brain chemistry. You see, when we focus on completing tasks, especially those aligned with our goals, our brains release these chemicals that make us feel good.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in reward system.
Wait, are we talking about those feel-good hormones? Because I am all ears.
You know it. Our brains are wired to reward us for taking action. It's not about forcing ourselves to be motivated. It's about understanding that even small wins, those tiny steps forward, trigger these positive chemical reactions, creating a feedback loop of motivation and accomplishment.
Okay, so it's like how I feel after a killer workout,
Yeah.
accomplished,
Yes.
energized,
Yes.
and ready to tackle the world.
There you go.
But what about those of us who aren't exactly wired to find joy in every single task? I mean, not every to-do list item is going to spark a dopamine party.
That's where we get to have a little fun. Remember we talked about turning grocery shopping into a game? Well, this next idea takes that playful approach and applies it to, well, pretty much anything you want to achieve. It's all about tapping into the power of play. Think about those epic sports rivalries, that drive to win, to outperform, even if it's just against your own personal best, can be incredibly motivating.
It's true. A little healthy competition never hurt anyone. But how do we keep that momentum going? Especially when life throws those inevitable curveballs. Motivation can be fleeting, right?
Absolutely. And this is where having a few tricks up your sleeve comes in handy. One strategy the book highlights is the power of visual cues and even writing letters to yourself.
Okay, letters to myself. That sounds a little Dear Diary for me. Are we talking about vision boards or something?
Okay. Vision boards can be helpful, but this is about going a step further, creating these tangible reminders that you can connect with on a deeper level. Think about it. How often do we actually sit down and write out our goals, our deepest desires, with actual pen and paper?
I'll be honest, my handwriting is basically a dying art form.
But that's the beauty of it. It's not about perfect penmanship. It's about the process of putting those dreams on the paper, sealing them in an envelope, and then revisiting them weeks, months, or even years later. It's like sending a message to your future self.
Wow, a time capsule of aspirations. I like it. So instead of letting those goals get lost in the shuffle of everyday life, we're creating these physical reminders that we can't ignore.
Precisely. And the act of writing itself has this incredible way of solidifying those desires in your mind. It's not just about the words, it's about the intention behind them.
So it's about creating a system that keeps those goals front and center, reminding us of why we set them in the first place.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be limited to letters. Experiment with different techniques that resonate with you. Maybe it's a sticky note on your bathroom mirror, a vision board that inspires you, or even setting a recurring reminder on your phone with a motivational quote.
Speaking of reminders, I'm reminded of how, before we got sidetracked by those fascinating letters, we were talking about the brain releasing those feel-good chemicals when we take action.
Absolutely. And this ties into another powerful concept from the book, creating a new home for your mind.
Okay, a new mental address. I'm all for upgrading my headspace. What does that look like?
It's about consciously cultivating a mental environment that's conducive to growth and positivity. Think of it like decluttering your thoughts. replacing those limiting beliefs and negative self-talk with a more empowering and supportive inner dialogue.
So we're talking about more than just positive affirmations. It's about actively creating a mental space where we feel supported, motivated, and ready to tackle anything.
Exactly. And one of the most effective ways to do that is through meaningful conversations with yourself. Not those fleeting pep talks we give ourselves in the mirror, but real, honest dialogues where we explore our motivations, challenge our fears, and get to the core of what we truly desire.
So it's like having a heart-to-heart with our own minds.
Precisely. And those conversations can be incredibly revealing. They allow us to uncover those hidden beliefs that might be holding us back and replace them with a more empowering narrative.
This is making me realize that our minds are capable of amazing things when we give them the right environment to thrive in. But what about those inevitable moments when our motivation takes a nosedive? We all have those days, right?
Absolutely. We're all human. And that's where the book's wisdom really shines. Instead of viewing those slumps as failures, the authors encourage us to embrace them as a natural part of the process.
Embrace the slumps. Isn't the goal to avoid them altogether?
You'd think so. But they argue that those dips in motivation are like the ebb and flow of the tide. They're inevitable. It's what we do with those moments that matters most.
So instead of letting a temporary slump derail us, we should see it as an opportunity to pause, recharge, and come back even stronger.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective from I'm failing to I'm recalibrating or I'm gathering energy for the next push.
I like that. It takes the pressure off those moments when we're not feeling our most motivated selves.
Exactly. And speaking of pressure, the book also highlights the importance of understanding the difference between pressure that motivates us and pressure that paralyzes us. It's about finding that sweet spot where we're challenged but not overwhelmed.
That makes sense. So how do we distinguish between those two types of pressure?
It's often about the stories we tell ourselves. If we're constantly focused on the fear of failure, the what-ifs, and the worst-case scenarios, we're creating pressure that's rooted in negativity.
And that kind of pressure is more likely to lead to procrastination, self-doubt, and ultimately inaction.
Exactly. But if we can shift our focus to the positive possibilities, the excitement of the challenge, and the belief in our own abilities, we create a different kind of pressure.
Pressure that fuels our motivation instead of draining it.
Precisely. It's about reframing those challenges as opportunities for growth and viewing those moments of pressure as a sign that we're stretching ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
So it's about embracing those butterflies in our stomach as a sign that we're on the right track, that we're moving towards something meaningful.
Exactly. And this leads to another powerful concept, the importance of surrounding ourselves with the right people.
Okay, so we're talking about building a supportive network, a team of cheerleaders who believe in us even when we doubt ourselves.
Absolutely. But it goes beyond just having supportive friends and family. It's about surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us, who challenge us to grow, and who embody the qualities we admire.
So we're talking mentors, role models, even those we admire from afar.
Exactly. Think about those people you admire. Those who seem to effortlessly achieve their goals and live their dreams. What is it about them that inspires you? What qualities do they embody that you'd like to cultivate in your own life?
I'm already thinking of a few people who fit that description.
And that's the beauty of it. We can find inspiration everywhere. It's about consciously choosing to surround ourselves with those who uplift us, who believe in our potential, and who remind us of what's possible.
So it's about curating our inner circle, both in person and even virtually, through books, podcasts, and the content we consume.
Exactly. We become a reflection of the company we keep, so it's essential to choose wisely.
That's a powerful reminder. Speaking of reminders, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how many practical strategies we can implement to unlock that inner motivation.
It truly is. And the best part is, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore.
I love it. We've been exploring all these powerful strategies for unlocking motivation.
Right. And
it's incredible how much our mindset plays a role.
Absolutely. It's not just about willpower or discipline. It's about understanding the psychology behind motivation. Those subtle shifts in thinking that can make all the difference.
And one of the concepts that really stood out to me was this idea of the 5% solution.
Okay.
It sounds almost too simple.
Right.
But the idea of making these small, incremental changes over time is really resonating with me.
It's a game changer, really, because it takes the pressure off that all or nothing approach that often leads to burnout and frustration. Instead of trying to overhaul our entire lives overnight, we can focus on making these small, manageable changes that add up over time.
5% doesn't sound like a lot.
Right.
Is that really enough to make a significant impact?
You'd be surprised. Think about it this way. If you improved just 1% each day within a year, you'd be 365% better. That's the power of compounding in action.
Wow, that puts it into perspective. So how do we apply this 5% principle to, say, our goals?
It's about identifying those small daily actions that move us closer to our desired outcome. Let's say your goal is to write a book. Instead of overwhelming yourself with the thought of writing hundreds of pages, you could start by committing to writing just 500 words a day.
That feels way more doable than staring at a blank page, dreading the thought of writing an entire novel.
Exactly. And those small wins, those daily victories, create momentum. They trigger those feel-good chemicals in our brains, making us more likely to stick with it.
It's like building a success spiral. Those small wins fuel our motivation, which leads to more wins, and so on.
Precisely. And it's not just about setting those small goals, it's about celebrating those victories along the way. We often get so caught up in striving for the end goal that we forget to acknowledge our progress.
That's so true. We need to give ourselves permission to celebrate those milestones, no matter how small they might seem.
Absolutely. Every step forward is a reason to celebrate. It reinforces those positive neural pathways in our brains, making it more likely that we'll continue moving in the right direction.
This reminds me of a story you shared earlier about the father whose advice to his son, who was struggling with a school project, was to take it bird by bird.
I love that story. It's such a great reminder that even the most daunting tasks become manageable when we break them down into smaller, more digestible steps.
It's about shifting our perspective from feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of the task to focusing on the one bird, the one step that we can take right now.
Exactly. And this approach applies to all areas of our lives, not just our goals. If we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, we can use this same principle to break down those challenges into smaller, more manageable pieces.
So instead of letting our minds spiral into worry and overwhelm, we can ask ourselves, what's one small step I can take right now to move forward?
Precisely. And it's amazing how empowering that simple shift in perspective can be. It allows us to reclaim our agency, to remember that we have the power to choose how we respond to any situation.
This entire conversation has been so empowering. I'm walking away with a renewed sense of motivation and a toolbox full of practical strategies to apply to my own life.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, the most important thing is to experiment, to find what works best for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to motivation.
It's about listening to our own inner wisdom, trying new things, and finding those strategies that light our fire and keep us moving forward.
Exactly. And remember to be kind to yourself along the way. Motivation is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs. But the key is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in your own potential.
This deep dive has been a true gift. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, you have everything you need within you to achieve your dreams. Now go out there and make it happen.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of motivation and are feeling inspired to unlock your own inner drive. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep reaching for your dreams.